Hey, welcome. We're about to dive into a question that has literally shaped empires and honestly ruined countless lives for centuries. It's a mystery that feels ancient, but the answer? It's pure science. And the craziest part is, that answer has been hiding in plain sight for over 1,000 years.
All right, picture this. You're a king, right? And you're absolutely obsessed with having a son to carry on your name. Your queen gives birth, but it's a beautiful baby girl. In that moment, in that world, who gets blamed? Who carries all that weight?
Yeah, you guessed it. For pretty much all of human history, it was always the mother. From the highest royal courts down to the simplest village homes, women faced unbelievable pressure, sometimes even worse, for something they had absolutely zero control over. So why was this assumption so incredibly wrong? Well, the answer is written in our DNA.
Okay, so let's hit pause on the history for a second and jump right into the hard science. We're about to crack the genetic code that actually decides a baby's gender. And it all starts with these tiny little things called chromosomes. So what are chromosomes? Think of them like the ultimate biological instruction manual for building a person. They're these super coiled strands of DNA, and they've got all the specific instructions that make you, well, you. And it turns out, just two of these little guys are in charge of determining biological sex.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Look at this breakdown. Females have two X chromosomes, XX. That means every single egg a woman produces will always carry one X chromosome. It's a constant, no variation. But males, they have one X and one Y. And that right there, that's the game changer. So because a man has both X and Y chromosomes, his sperm is basically a 50-50 lottery. About half of his sperm will carry an X, and the other half will carry a Y. This one little fact is the key to this whole mystery. You see, the woman's contribution is fixed. The man's? It's literally a coin toss every single time.
And this chart just lays it all out perfectly. Look, the mother, over on the left, she can only pass on an X. That's all she has to give in this equation. Now, if the father's sperm that makes it is also carrying an X, you get XX, a girl. But if that sperm is carrying a Y, you get XY, a boy. The takeaway is crystal clear. The father's sperm is the one and only deciding factor.
You know, there's a really great analogy from our source material that just makes this click. The woman's body is the soil, it's essential, it's where everything grows. But the man's fluid is the seed, and the seed is what determines what kind of plant you're going to get. It's such a simple way to think about a pretty complex biological fact, right? So there we have it. Science figured this out in the 20th century. Case closed, story's over, right? Well, not so fast. This is where things get really, really weird. It turns out a massive clue to this scientific reality was written down in a sacred text more than 1,400 years ago.
Just look at the wording here. This is a verse from the Quran, from way back in the 7th century. It says that the creation of male and female comes from a sperm drop when it is emitted. It doesn't just say from sex. It points directly, specifically, to the male fluid as the point of origin for gender.
Okay, but let's be real. It's a fair question to ask. Couldn't this just be a lucky guess? Or maybe it's just a vague, poetic statement and we're just reading our modern science back into it. That's a totally valid thought, so let's actually dig into that skepticism. Yeah, to really do this justice, we have to look at the strongest possible argument against this interpretation. We have to understand the skeptic's point of view before we can really decide what we think.
So the strongest skeptical argument, the steel man version, goes something like this. Look, ancient people thought a baby was made from a mix of male and female fluids. So this verse isn't a scientific claim. It's just a general statement about how babies are made. The word nutfa just means a drop of fluid, not sperm with chromosomes. But there's a really compelling counterargument to that. All right, let's break down the comeback. First, look at the specifics of the language. The verse connects the outcome, male and female, directly to one thing, the emitted drop. It never mentions a mixture. Second, you have to think about the social context. This was a time and place where baby girls were sometimes seen as a burden. So to put the biological responsibility squarely on the man, that was a radical defense of women. And finally, think about what's not there. The verse doesn't mention the woman's fluid at all in this gender equation. It completely lets her off the hook for the blame she'd been carrying for centuries. So what happens when we put all these puzzle pieces together? What we get is this incredible story that stretches across millennia. It connects a huge historical injustice, a modern scientific breakthrough, and a, well, a remarkably specific ancient text. This timeline really puts it all into a sharp focus. For thousands of years, there was this terrible injustice, all based on a total misunderstanding of biology. Then, 1400 years ago, this clue pops up that completely goes against that ancient belief. And then, finally, just in the last century, science comes along with the DNA proof that confirms the clue and flips that historical blame on its head.
And that leaves us with this one final, really provocative thought. History blamed the mother. Genetics shows us it's the father who's the deciding factor. The truly mind-bending question is, how did an ancient code seem to settle the argument 1400 years before we even knew what X and Y chromosomes were? What do you think?